Welcome to the Rocks and Oceans podcast, where you'll learn all about living in healthy masculine and feminine balance. We are your hosts, Jamel Harris and Alex Golden, and we made all the relationship mistakes before, so you don't have to.
Fun, connection, abundance, and a whole lot of sexy time will become your daily reality when you choose to step into an aligned way of knowing yourself. No worries if you feel salty or cynical from heartbreak. That's often the most powerful starting point for transformation. Welcome, and we're about to have a whole lot of fun together.
That's
Yay!
right. Well, welcome to the podcast, guys. We're glad you're here.
So glad.
And we wanted to talk today about a topic that's needs to be talked about today.
It sure does.
Right? And the topic today is going to be decision making, right? Because when you're in a masculine and feminine relationship, the masculine has a role as a leader and the feminine has a role as well to support her partner. And so what we wanted to come on here today to talk about is decision making. And you're like, what do you mean by decision making? I'm going to tell you. Have any of you guys or girls out there wanted to go out to eat somewhere? Right? And I'm talking to Alex. I'm like, where you want to go eat? And what do you say?
I don't know. Where do you want to go eat?
And then I'm like, well, where do you want to go eat? And she's like,
And then the man says, well, how about Applebee's? And then she's like, I don't want to go to Applebee's. I don't feel like Applebee's today.
right.
Okay.
And then he's like, see, I told you, we can't make decisions, blah, blah. And it turns into a whole argument. I know you guys know what we're talking about. Right? And then he says, I don't want to go to Applebee's. And she like, well, you just asked me. And now we're at a impasse, right? And so we wanted to come on and talk today about decision making. That's just one example, but other examples are like making decisions on what the kids are going to do.
Yeah, should they join basketball or karate? When, like, what time of day, what time of the week, like what day of the week is best? What are the other people going to do while they do that? Gosh, life has a lot of decisions to make.
It does. And I feel like our job as the masculine is to help take as many decisions away from the feminine as possible. Right. And the reason why that is because a lot of times us as guys, we don't make those decisions that we just talked about.
Yeah.
Right. We didn't help them decide where we're going to eat, or even if we're eating at home, it's like, what do you want to eat? What do you want to eat? What do you want to eat? It's just never decision making. And I know y'all know what we're talking about. But what happens is, as that goes on too long, us as guys, we like to have sex. But the challenge is you've had your partner making decisions all day, meaning she's been trying to decide what to do with the kids, what sports are going to play, like we talked about. She's got to figure out dinner. Do we eat chicken tonight, or do we eat pork chops, or what do we make meatloaf? She's making all these decisions all day, and by the time she gets to the bed, she's done. She doesn't have any more energy. And a lot of times we come in because we hadn't been in that decision making process, and we're like, "Hey, man, let's do it and let me get some." Right? And she's kind of like, "I'm tired." I don't know if anybody's ever heard that, but you want to speak on that from the feminine perspective?
I sure can. Yeah. I think, well, let's maybe back up and even talk about kind of like the fact that when we talk masculine and feminine, we're talking energies.
Absolutely.
Right? So this isn't masculine and feminine energy is different than the gender that someone identifies as. So, really, the most statistically common way is that a male who considers himself a man will feel predominantly masculine in their energy, and then the same thing is true a female that identifies as a woman and then has usually feels feminine energy. There's also smaller subsets of within each of us. Then I have my own predominantly feminine energy, but I carry within me my own masculine energy for that's helpful when you're single and stuff like that, right? And then Jamel also has the same thing of he's predominantly masculine, but he has his own inner feminine, as in before I came along, luckily, it wasn't one of those situations where you walk into a man's house and he is the mattress on the floor and the alarm clock's on the box that the mattress came in, and he's, like that kind of thing. It didn't really happen. Now, even though we were like post divorce, and actually we were starting over, and our apartments weren't like nice. I mean, you sat on my little like the twin mattress that I had that was extra. But what I mean by that is that the sort of like that you took care of yourself, like you took the nurturing and the care after divorce, and you still had that within you. So then I walked into a place that wasn't like totally dude zone kind of thing or the way some, and like we don't enjoy washing our hair with like the Palmolive from your that kind of stuff. So when we talk about energies, that's really more of what we're talking about. And so from the feminine's perspective, it's really a good point in terms of like when I am going throughout my day, owning a business, leading people, having clients, and then also kids, my own family, all that. In a day, I think the feminine spends most of the time organizing people and things and activities. So our focus tends to be much more spread out over like a masculine working is going to be like, hey, don't talk to me. I'm on this right now.
Right.
Right. Whereas you come up to a feminine, I might be editing slides for like a training I have coming up. I'm also answering texts on, what the team should be doing. And I'm talking with you about dinner. So my brain is always running like on management of all those things, because you're setting the tone for the mission we're on.
Right.
But I'm all the supporting roles, the manager of all of them. So in that, there's a lot of decisions to make in each of those areas every single day. And so I essentially have to feel like I have to mount my own masculine decision-making response for all of those to happen. And some of them are appropriate, like things that happen in my business, right? I can make the call about. But what's interesting is that when I have spent too much of that masculine energy, like throughout the day, sometimes it sort of like peters out, where even in my own business, I'll come and be like, hey, what do you think? Right. Like get some guidance, because essentially I'm using something that is not my primary energy. And therefore I just don't have as much capacity. Now, luckily, I do get to still live out my business and my decisions from a feminine approach as well. And that's something that I feel like I'm developing personally, like in my personal work and the coaching that I get. I have intimacy coach, all that I'm working on like shoring up my own feminine to begin to also function as that. But it's a good point on if I've been mostly using my masculine and I have less power in that. If you then, for sexy time at the end of the day, if I have been in my masculine, first of all, I'm really far away from the receptiveness of the feminine. So like touch, that's when if anyone has like a girl who, when she sort of like moves out of the way of your touch, often that's more of that. I'm not receptive. I'm not in my feminine energy enough to be receptive. And so if I am working and Jay comes up to me and he like rubs my shoulders and I go like this, I am heavily in my masculine.
Absolutely.
Like, because the masculine, I mean, have you ever, like, everybody and try to interrupt your dad or another man while he's really working? Like, that everyone sort of knows that's not the time to, like, fuck with the dude, right?
Right.
Like, we just all, sorry, I keep hitting the mic, guys. We all sort of just know that's what you're getting. So then that's kind of for the masculine to have that understanding of, whether it was him that offloaded the decisions or just life got busy and she needed to make decisions. If she's moving her body like that, there's probably something going on, as in, it's not bad, but she's in her masculine. Your job for getting the sexy time is to get her back into the create the opportunity to create the feminine. And then from my understanding now, I tend to like sex a lot, so like I don't have a problem with that, but I do think most people are like that. Like, I don't often talk to women who who categorically do not want to because they don't like sex.
Right.
It's always another reason of, I've been making the call all day, I'm doing stuff with the kids, I'm picking up the slack, like, especially if she works and then is expected to do 100% of the childcare, 100% of the food, 100% of the cleaning. You know, is where like the sometimes situations come in where it's like you want a traditional wife, but she's still working 50% of the time. And that's so common today that I think women get into a little bit of a struggle because the traditional wife never had to also then have a full-time career. That wasn't even how it came into being. And so I think that's why it's so common for it to be like, I'm too pooped at the end of the day to be doing all that. But I think that's where the importance of the decision making being offloaded happens. So with us, we have a pretty, like, we work all day, and we're around, but then at night I essentially have a mechanism to let you know, like, to me, I just say, oh, I'm decisioned out, and I start letting you know, like, very clearly, I am tired. Like, not physically tired, but energetically, I'm out of that capacity to make decisions.
Yeah, and I feel like in our relationship, for me, that's the clue to take over the decision making, if that makes sense. Because, I mean, a lot of couples, they both work outside the home, they both have children. We all have to deal with the tussles of life, but there are times when both of us are decision out. But particular in your case, when the feminine is done making decisions, that's our job to come in there and start making those decisions. That's not the time to say, hey, babe, what's for dinner?
You're right, yeah.
That's another decision, if that makes sense. It's not the time to say, hey, babe, where's my underwear at? Where's this or where's that? And because what happens is when we give the decision making to the feminine, essentially she has another kid.
Right, yeah.
You know what I mean? And so, what am I eating today? She got to feed the husband, the boyfriend. Where's my laundry at? Where's my jacket at? And I've done all this stuff. That's why we're having this podcast, so we can help the world, right? And so, what happens is when we put down our decision making as the masculine, you put the feminine in a situation where she feels like she has another kid. And if she feels like you're another kid, she's not probably going to want to have sex with you.
Yes.
Versus if you look at that situation that you just mentioned, you're sitting on the couch, she's been working all day, you touch her, she kind of comes away. That's not a time for you to get offended. That's just her saying, hey, baby, I'm in the middle of something right now. And you just circle back around, if that makes sense. But it's not that she doesn't want you to touch her. That's really the clue to say, hey, let me go over here and get the dinner started. Let me put the dishes in the dishwasher if you're available, right? Not just sitting up watching the game. It's taking some of that stuff off of her. Now, once you get done with your work and you get done with dinner and it's sexy time, she's more likely to get involved in that versus if she's making all decisions, cooking all the food, doing all the lunch. If she's doing everything, she doesn't have any energy left to give you, if that makes sense.
Right, and I think it comes down to people kind of sometimes feel a little offended, like, well, women can make decisions. Absolutely. Like, I'm a whole doctor, right? Like, as in a board has agreed that I am smart enough to, like, do life and death for people. Like, so it's not that, like, of course, when I'm at my job, I'm not calling Jay asking what I need to do, right? In that kind of sense. So it's not the fact that the feminine is incapable of making decisions. And if you are someone that does take offense to the idea of masculine leadership in the home, that sort of lifestyle and this talk of traditional energies may not be for you. As in, we believe that the whole point of having all of us be on a playing level field, like in terms of sexism, racism, all that, is just so people can make the choice they want to make.
Yeah.
So if there's a woman or a man that's just like, I don't want that. I want my woman to be strong and I want her to feel like she can make decisions and I don't need to do it. Awesome. That is totally cool. But then this podcast isn't the place for you, right?
Right.
Because this is where there's lots of people that fall into the category of really feeling that the masculine's role is the leadership. So it's not that the feminine is incapable, but it's more that if the priority for decision making falls to the masculine, he stays in charge of the leadership, right? Once more than the majority of the decisions go to the feminine, then essentially you're saying she is leading.
Absolutely.
So, right? So it's not that you have to make decisions as a masculine, but you have to if you want to be the masculine leader in your home, right? And have all the benefits that come with that, because even though I work and do the things and make some calls, we have enough where I get to stay in my feminine most of the day. And that's why our sex life has never changed and actually has increased from like the early honeymoon phase, right? Like most people are like, that's the best it's ever going to be. And then it goes down or it gets less rare, it gets less exciting. Whereas we've had the opposite. It's actually gotten better, more exciting.
We're going to tell y'all more about that too. So stick around.
And you want to hear it. but that's the whole thing, is that there's a lot of benefits, but it comes down to doing the original decision, which we had to decide that this is how we want to live. Like, am I capable of making decisions? Yes. Do I want to make them for our family 100% of the time? Absolutely not. It's just not something that I desire. And when I don't make the decisions for that, I then have a whole bunch of other stuff I can work on. Right? Like, I don't have to make the call on what we're doing with our family. If you're like, oh, I want chicken for dinner, I'm like, my thinking's done. I go pick up chicken, I make chicken, Absolutely. I put chicken on a plate, and we are good. Right? Like, so you're happy, you feel supported, you get fed, all that kind of need. And it's so much easier for me to just sort of say, like, I had to ask myself, do I really care about that kind of choice? And this is important because it gets to, if you're going to offload the decision, how does the feminine receive it, right? Because part of the whole, I think men sometimes hold back on the decision making because then they don't want to hear any flack about it.
Yeah.
Like making that call.
Yeah. And I want to speak to that too, because a lot of times, and I did this so I can speak to it, is we turn the decision making over to the feminine, but we don't like them decisions.
And then who do you hold responsible for those decisions?
The feminine, right? And so you said something earlier that's very, very important, is when we defer the decisions to the feminine, we're no longer the leader in the home. And as a masculine, you can feel that. Meaning, when you're not the leader, right? Everybody feels it. The kids feel it because she doesn't want to be the man. She just wants to look pretty and sexy and love all on you and love on the kids and just be there for you. But it's very, very important for us as males to take on the mantle of decision making. And I understand a lot of us, we didn't come up in that environment. Like, my dad wasn't around. I was raised by my mom. So I do understand there are people out there that maybe you didn't have that masculine presence in your life, and you don't know what that looks like. But nowadays with YouTube, books, there's all kind of stuff out there that you can resource yourself with so that you can learn to start making decisions, because it's not necessarily making a good decision or a bad decision. It's just making a decision. I'll give you an example. Obviously we have a coaching practice, right? And so I was meeting some people. This Sunday we went to a restaurant for our meeting, and I chose the restaurant, I chose the time, I chose everything. And they was like, how did you pick the place? It's like amazing. It was a husband and a wife, and they were like, how did you pick the place? Like, she was just amazed that I picked the place. And I was like, well, I just went on Yelp and I just looked at the stars, and we were meeting at 3 and it had a available time, and I just clicked it. The decision is that easy, right? It's just going on an app, picking a place. Now, are all your decisions good? Is every place you're going to go to good? No.
And we've been, and that to that point, I think that's where the feminine has a role to play. And really the question is, what is more important to you, right? Like, if living as within your feminine energy is the importance, then if you, let's say you go, like that place had some, like it was too loud, right?
Yeah,
For a meeting.
it was like a DJ in there. Like I didn't know all this beforehand. And this is what I mean,
Yeah.
fellas. I just made the decision.
Right, yeah.
What this podcast is about, is making decisions. So I didn't know a DJ was gonna be there. I didn't know anything. I just knew it had good ratings, and I want to go somewhere that's good, right? If everybody's saying it's good, I want to go there. So I chose the spot. But when I got there, I realized, oh, this was not a good decision for the type of meeting that we're having. So I told a couple, I said, hey, it is a good place if we were hanging out, but for this meeting, I apologize. Next time we meet up, we'll go to a better place. But they were cool with that because neither one of them had to make the decision. I made the decision. They just had to show up, if that makes sense. What were you going to say?
Exactly. So I think the feminine so often is like straddling the fence. And this is something I used to do where I had the desire to make the decision, but then I would also sort of like assess the goodness of that decision that I had contributed to making. So if I didn't like the place or something was wrong, then I sort of was judging me on the decision because I didn't really want to be making it. Yeah, right. So it's like I'm there and I'm like, oh, we shouldn't have come here. Like with my ex, we shouldn't have come here. Like this is too loud. This is whatever. It's too cold. Whereas when I sort of answered the question of what's more important to me, it was being in my feminine energy was going to be more important. Now, I had decided that before we met, so I was already there and living that way. But essentially, then I remember we went to one restaurant and they sat us. It was like partially outside and it was freezing cold. Right. And it turned into like, I could have been like, oh gosh, it's so cold. Why are we here? Blah, blah, blah. But because I had decided that being my feminine energy was more important, I just was like, I'm cold. And then you got warm drinks. You put your jacket on me. Like you sat next to me and put your arm around me. And I just let you handle you took responsibility for the call, but I was sharing what I was experiencing. And like it ended up being really fun.
Yeah.
Like I didn't go into problem solving still, even though there were problems, or
even just making the whole date a problem. Like, why do we come here? It's so cold. Because that keeps the guy from making the decisions down the road. Like he knew he made a bad decision. Like I knew it was cold.
Yeah, like
we
it
both
wasn't
were cold,
news
right?
to you.
It wasn't like nobody knew it was a bad idea. All of us knew it was a bad idea, right? But part of the thing that Alex is so good at, and I really appreciate about her, is she don't make me feel bad if I make a bad decision.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? And because she know it was bad, I know it was bad, but we're not in here to tear each other down. We're here to build each other up. And so, like she said, I'm gonna give her my jacket. I'm gonna do everything I can to get her warm because we're already at the place. The decision's made, but how can we make the best of this environment? And on that point, when you're in that environment, say you make a bad decision, as a masculine, you don't need to be complaining and just have a good time. Just enjoy the food. We're already cold. We done been cold before.
Or if you're going to leave, you can just be like, oh, we're going to make a new call. And again, as the feminine, it's like, what is more important to you, chilling and having a good time? Or do you want to be in charge of getting out your phone, looking for another place, looking at just sit there, sip your drink, and look cute while he looks for something. Like it's actually, when you make the call, it's so much less work. It's mostly just arguing within you on, oh, well, should we go here? Should we do that? Put all that shit down. I mean, you're not making the call. So if you're going to move to another location, let him figure out where he's going to take you. If it's not, and I have another example. I only have these two because generally you nail it. But, I remember early on you took me to a museum, but I had dressed up like for more going out. And so I was wearing like basically Daisy Dukes. Mm-hmm. And here we are like, oh, we're going to go to a museum. And in my head, I'm like, boy, I'm not dressed for a museum, right? I had a shirt that I could tie around my waist, so then that was what fixed it practically, right? And I think where it comes down to is that a lot of what's going to make your feelings go off as a feminine is the story that you tell yourself, right? What I didn't do was be like, he knew we were going to a museum. He could have told me how to dress. Like as in I had asked, like, what should I wear? And then you're like, just dress casual. And that's true for a museum, but there was just a little bit of that like
Little
detail
ass cheeks
missing.
hanging out in the
And
museum.
actually, this is we forgot to say, pretty much all of our dates are a surprise for me. I don't hear about where I'm being taken. I just get like a score, 8 out of 10 on the dressiness. And then
Yeah.
I'll ask follow-up questions like, is this a heels or are flats better? Things like that. Or Jay will say, oh, there's going to be walking, so comfortable shoes. So he lets me know. But in that sense, like I wasn't necessarily, then I could see you had answered accurately. It was casual. It just was a little more conservative than
Absolutely.
someone might go out casual clothes, right? And so, I was able to fix it easily with tying the thing around my waist. So that sort of like, I was just like, I'm respectably dressed in a museum. But then it was, okay, how much in that narrative, it was sort of like, does this impact my trust? Because really, I think most feminines, when they're in that argument, they either, and this may hurt, they either don't trust their man because of him, or they don't trust their man because of her. That's really what it comes down to, because if you are telling yourself the story of, I trust this person, when there's a misstep like that, I just trusted us to figure it out. I didn't even have to go to the stories of like, he doesn't care enough about me to not show my ass in a museum. I didn't go there, because at the heart of it was, I know your intention is to have a nice date and to take me out and to show me a good time.
Yeah, I think that's an episode in itself, like the dating and stuff, because what she's talking about, part of the feminine is like adventure, right?
Yeah.
So if you're telling your girlfriend everywhere you're going, everything you're going to do, you just took all the fun out of
like
it, right?
the mystery, the surprise, because the ocean is like so diverse. There's so many different ecosystems in it. So the feminine tends to be pretty varied.
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
You don't see a lot of single women who like eat the same breakfast every day, go to their job, watch the same shows, play the same video games. That's more of a single man behavior. A single woman generally is like, and then I got drinks with my friends, and then I met up here. I went to yoga class with my friend Diane, and then I did a Zoom call with my friend Rachel. Like, we have a lot of the connections, right? And so I think that's why it really, we like the variety. And I think when it comes down to it, people don't like the trust thing. Like, I know a lot of women that I'll talk to, and they'll be like, no, I trust my partner. He just can't plan for shit. And it's like, tell me again what you're
really trust him,
trusting.
man.
Yeah, like tell me again where the trust is. If he's incapable and cannot do it correctly and has no idea what you even require, then my question is, why are you with him? And that's not because we want people to break up, but it's sort of like, if you really cannot trust your man to take care of your physical body while you are out on a date, then why are you with him?
True story.
Why is he leading you in your feminine life? That's where you'll end up.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it's just tough, because the guy will step up and he'll do a date, but then she's like, why do we come here? Why are we doing this? And that is not the time. Part of it is, and this may sound a little shallow, but part of it is we're building each other up.
Yeah.
Right? So say this man's never made decisions. He make a decision to go, I don't know,
It's
to a
not
cold
shallow,
restaurant,
that's
right?
loving. Yeah.
It's loving. Is that what it is, baby?
Yeah.
Okay. So he makes a decision and it's cold. Well, just be happy that he made a decision. Like, he has a history of not making decisions, right? And so you have to be careful in that moment to make sure that you're building that man up. He does have confidence, but he has to be confident in making his decisions. And if you tear him down for, why'd you bring me here? Well, he's going to be a little more apprehensive the next time he chooses, like, well, is it going to be cold? Is it going to be cold? And then you go there and you say something negative. Now, the third time, he's even more apprehensive, like, man, now he don't know where to go. And you're like, you never take me anywhere. Well, every time he took you somewhere, you had something to say. So now he's shut down and he don't know what to do. Is it right, wrong, or indifferent? He should be communicating, but this is what happens.
It really is. Yeah, like there's the ideal of what we're all going to talk about. But yeah, there's like the reality, and the reality is that most of us have had traumatizing things happen. And that can be like big T trauma, like getting molested or something. It can be little t. If he had a really critical mother, right? You may say, "Gosh, I wish they wouldn't put the QR codes on the table. I miss menus." And he hears, "This is the worst place ever. Why did you bring me here?" So it's less about kind of like having a finished product and who you're dating and who you're with, but more like, can you get behind the process, right? Like, even if he has been traumatized, are you in it with him like that to build him up? And if you're not, that's where you may decide, like, I'm not really taking on this. Like, that feels like a project. I'm not really in for it, whatever. Like, as in, no one's saying you have to be there for it.
Right.
And same for a man with a woman, like all of that. But if you are saying you love someone and you want to be with them, then I think all of the world is like all of my world is tailored for you, right? Like, as in, I don't care what could happen. I'm like, what's happening here?
Yeah.
So, and I think that's important because I think it's easy for women to compare because we do have so many connections. But for both masculine and feminine, if you keep telling yourself a crappy story about your person, you'll start to hate them.
True story.
If you're always like, well, they could do this, other people have that, this could be like that. Well, Jamel and Alex said theirs is like this.
My
Cool.
friend girl husband took her here.
Right. And that kind of thing is like, it's making the call for you initially, like, do you like them? Because essentially, I think because I like you, because I love you, and because I trust you, whenever we go places, I mean, it sounds kind of like silly, but literally in my head, it's like, like, I am not thinking anything.
Yeah.
It's like the one time I get a break from thinking of stuff, because my head's like constantly going and I'm always thinking of new stuff and working on whatever. But then, like, when we go out and stuff, I'm like, I don't even know where I'm walking,
Yeah.
And it makes it feel so good because I can trust in that. I've made the initial call of I trust you. Now all other decisions happen from there. Now, if there were many missteps, I'd have to take that into account. Luckily, we don't have anything like that. But that's where, dating becomes the process of actually vetting that out. Is this someplace I could function like that? And so I think women have to be more gentle on their delivery, like in the bitching and moaning about stuff. I do think men in the masculine could be a little more resilient in there. Like, if you've made the decision to be a masculine leader, it kind of also seems like it implies a decision and the call of, are you going to back down when someone disagrees with you? Because guess what? That's going to happen all the time in life. Like, other men are going to disagree. It's not just your girl. So it's like, just because she has a critique, like, do you have to make that mean that she's now the authority figure over you, and now her words are so impactful to you that you just crumble and never plan a date again? Right? There's kind of an implied weakness in that to say, I need my whole world to be in glowing praise of me and like get a fucking participation trophy every time I plan a date or see that their dishes needs to be done. Right? It's just, that is that masculine leadership. You're not just making the calls, but you're also saying, I have done the work that I can stand up to criticism and I don't just crumble. Because if you're, in my view, if the masculine is going to lead, when there's leaders and followers, who's the one that runs around pulling bullshit?
Followers.
Right. If there's a shepherd and sheep, who does the shepherd go get? The sheep. So it's like, if anyone's going to bullshit, anyone's going to complain, anyone's going to bitch and moan, it's going to be the followers. Obviously, that's the whole point. Why would a leader complain? Because then everybody starts complaining, all the followers start following.
That's a good point.
So it's like the leader has to account for the fact that the feminine's always going to do more complaining as the follower. If you want it that way, that just comes with it.
Yeah, and that just comes back to us being strong and resilient and
Yeah.
just understanding who we are. Like she's just complaining that it's cold. That don't have nothing to do with you. You see what
Right.
I'm saying?
Yeah. It's
Like
not
we
like
take that all on, oh my God, I can't never take you nowhere, blah blah. It's not that. She's just cold right now. You
it's
know what I
cold.
mean? That's
I
just a
get
cue for
cold
you to
when it's like
give her your
72
jacket.
degrees outside, right?
Right.
Like I might be cold and at a completely unreasonable time,
Mm-hmm.
but my body is how it is.
And even in that, babe, we're talking about leadership. You're leading in all the areas, not just just making the decision to go to the restaurant, but you're leading in your attitude. Like, how are you
Yes.
going to act in there, right?
Exactly.
Because
Yeah.
if you start bitching and complaining, she gonna start bitching and complaining. Now we
That.
didn't have a good date, and so like she mentioned earlier, you get the jacket, you put it around her, you keep her warm as you can. Baby, this is a good time. Now we might be cold as hell,
Yeah, but
but we
then you
cold
have
together.
a really fun story of like
Exactly.
now, like I mean, I honestly don't have as many stories like that from the good dates that had no like, as in I can say what we did and it was fun, but it's not like a funny story, right? Like
Hmm.
it's not like a oh ha, listen to this. Like whereas when I think back to like huddling in the restaurant and like sipping our drinks underneath the coat and stuff. I don't know. There was a certain level of novelty and fun to that like we wouldn't have otherwise gotten. So in some ways it's true. It's more fun that way when there's like shit that happens
Yeah.
in life. And so it's like you'll miss out on all that if neither party can really withstand that. Now, I think we'd be amiss if we said if the feminine is truly not liking the experience, there's going to be an energy shift,
Hmm.
right? So how do you think that goes in terms of like you're really missing and she's really trying to keep her mouth shut? What happens next?
Well, I mean, I feel like you maybe need to ask some questions. Like, if it's really that bad, it may be a situation where we need to leave.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Hopefully, you don't pick a place like that, like 4 stars, three. Don't go with the 2 or 1. But most places you go to are going to be somewhat legit. But if there is a case where it's not a good place, make a call. Because the thing about it, our intuition is always speaking to it,
Mhm.
right? So even if you're sitting in that restaurant, if you're paying attention, like she's freezing, she's chattering, her teeth is cold. Well, that made me say, hey, babe, let me. I don't know. You may pull out your phone right there at the table, or you may say, hey, I'm gonna go to the bathroom, and you go look up a place. Hey, babe, let's get out of here and go somewhere. It's just
I
set
know a
another
place down the
reservation, right? I
yeah.
just know a place down the road. Let's get out of here. It's cold. You just make a different decision
Hmm.
because we're all humans. You're gonna make bad decisions.
Yeah.
I don't care who you are.
And
You're gonna
let's
make a
use
bad
a
decision.
more severe example. You move your family to another state and your wife's really unhappy or
Mm-hmm.
something like that, right? That's that kind of thing where I think for the feminine, it's important to make the call in terms of how serious is this, right? Like, as in, I may not like a restaurant, but then I'm asking myself, is this important enough to me to like say something to you about where I'm like, I need to give feedback on this decision, right? And in small situations, I may take into account, let's say you hadn't been taking, this is a theoretical, let's say you hadn't been taking me on dates. And in my mind, I'm like, I really don't like this place, but I know that he went out of his way to make, a date because he hadn't done it and he planned it, so I don't want to shit on it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You might find yourself where you're like between a rock and a hard place where you're trying to do the feminine thing to build him up, but
Absolutely.
you also have the feminine thing where you're like, this shit's not working.
This shit's terrible.
This is terrible. This is a bad call, right? Or sometimes your feminine intuition, like you're both going to get food poisoning here, do not eat here,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that's where I think is being intentional on if I have asking first, has it gotten to the place where I need to say something? And my kind of barometer for that is to be like, can I act normal? Or if my energy is going to be weird and stuff like that, then I can't. And in that case, I probably need to say something. If then it's crossed that threshold, then and see, this is what I mean by decision making. Like we're answering all these things in our own fucking head. So like
Uh-huh.
you may be like, she doesn't make that many decisions. Just listen to what she says. That's the call, right? So it's like I make the decision to actually open my mouth and vocalize some displeasure as to what's happening, even though I know I'm supposed to be building you up, right? Then it's gonna be how do I decide to share that,
Yeah.
right? And in that way, I may choose to speak in a way that highlights the problem without making it personal. Instead of you picked a shitty restaurant, right? It's this restaurant has this and this and this. These things are not working for me. And then a new request, right? Like it makes it so much less accusatory. The restaurant is that way, not you. Or
absolutely.
I moved to a whole nother state. The state is this way. My family is over here, XYZ. And then make the request.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it goes, I mean, as you're talking, I think it goes back to, do you like that person?
Yeah, I know, right?
And that's a whole nother episode that we're not talking about
episode
today. But if you like that person, I feel like if he does make the decision, and I'm saying this because I didn't used to do all this stuff. That's how I ended up divorced. I didn't do dates. I didn't pick, where do you want to go? Where do you want to go? I was that guy, right?
Yeah.
But I will say from living the life that I live now, masculinity, in the beginning, when you make decisions, it's hard to make the decisions. You're like, where do I go? Is this going to be a good place? No. Maybe I should go to this place. No. And the thing I figured out is just pick a place. Because what happens is the next time you'll get better and you'll get better and you'll get better. And so for us as a masculine, it's just getting good at continuing to make decisions. And as you continue to make those decisions, you'll get better and better and better and better. And your feminine, she'll be more and more loving. She'll be more softer because she doesn't have to make all those decisions. She can just sit back and love on you and be the beautiful being that she is.
Yeah.
Like you, baby.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah, I would like to actually talk more about a whole bunch of those things, but I think let's leave it here for now. Thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. Make sure you shoot us an email, support@rocksandoceanspodcast.com, and submit any, like, if you have a scenario, well, this is what happens in my relationship, this is what happens in our stuff, that, like, just go ahead and send it in and we will go ahead and answer it because we really want to make it real. Thanks for listening to the Rocks and Oceans podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend that could use this information. Let's build a happier and more powerful world together.
Have a good day. Talk to you soon.